Hey everybody, the January 2023 Roundup is brought to you by Fun Again Games. And hello everybody, how was your January? Hopefully you got a bunch of good games played. We certainly did, and we're about to tell you all about them. 33 games, if I counted correctly. And as always, we're going to be doing it in countdown format from least favorite to most favorite. But before we get to that, I'm going to mix things up a little bit. Normally, I wait until the end of the monthly roundup to do a shout out and thanks to all of these people right here. These are the folks who financially support the show on Patreon, on YouTube, and on Twitch. And I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, from me and from Shea and Ryan and Ruel and Kimberly and Amy and Maggie and Grant and Paolo, and actually, in the month of February, might have a couple of new contributors to add to that mix. But all of you folks keep all of us running, and now I want to just spend a minute doing a special verbal thank you to the high-level backers of the show: Davey Davis, Marlon Cruz, El Crosso, Akisa Griffin, Charles Hill, Cobra Misfit, Sharon Laubach, Denmoa 2030, Mom Gamer, CK Mom, Lex, Dennis Incy, Hans Peter Bach, Tom Cohen, Selma Lee, Mike Bloom, Stacy Lee, Cameron Zafar, Victory BHD, Chris Steele, Ben, Nicholas Elkins, Jimmy Schroeder Hansen, Dan Halligan, Marilyn, Quinn Brander, Heather Darian, Steve Ercolini, Dave Salvatore, Caitlin Albert, Paul Martinez, Aista Semilionis, Dr. Fu, Marion Gonzalez, Eric Z, Adrian Dong, Blake Wilson, Kevin Bertram, Cheryl Howard, Jay Huber, Jeff Glazen, Jerry Reese, and Graham Wallace. Thank you all, and thanks to the rest of all of you too for keeping Rahdo running. We could not do it without you folks. But hey, even if you don't support the show, thank you to everybody just for watching and having a good time. Hopefully you're going to find a game or two amongst this big list we're about to give you. And if you do, hey, why don't you like and subscribe and all the rest of it. But anyway, folks, enough of all of that. You're here for games. I'm here to give you games. Let's get going. We're starting out with Shea. Shea, what do you got?
Hey folks, I didn't play a ton of games this month, so I'm going to keep this pretty quick and start with my number 3 game, which was Alynthia. This is a game where you are playing as a guild member who is recovering in the world of Alynthia after it has been taken over by dragons. And this has a really interesting mix of this sort of Euro-style resource management and a big combat mechanic, because you have to fight off these dragons. Now, this game comes in a cooperative and competitive mode, and while the competitive mode wasn't really my cup of tea, I felt it was a little bit swingy, especially at 2 players. I really enjoyed the cooperative mode because I thought that was, the swingy elements worked in its favor because everyone was rooting for, those good dice rolls and stuff like that. And plus, there's, it's fun to take on the big menace of all these nests of dragons everywhere, and it is a very challenging co-op game. So that's my number 3, Alynthia. I have a run through for that if you want to check it out. But my number 2 game is something I didn't do for Rahdo. It's actually the reason I haven't played a lot, because I've been really focused on this game, which is Star Trek Ascendancy. And while I am making a tutorial for that for my channel, RTFM, it's not quite done yet. It's going to be ready in a couple of days, I think, but it's on its way. Now, this game is a big space 4X game, and I'm a big fan of those. Obviously, if you know anything about me, you know I really like Twilight Imperium, and this is not going to beat that, but I did really enjoy my time with it. In this game, you are playing as one of the different factions from Star Trek. So in the base game, you got the Federation, the Romulans, the Klingons, but with expansions, which I also am doing videos for, there's a ton of other factions that you can play as, and that really opens the game up to some new variety. So there's that. And what I really like about this game is that as you're building out the map, because you start off, all you have is 3 home systems in a big triangle on an empty board, and you explore the map. And this is a thing that I really like. It really ties in to the theme of Star Trek, which is exploration. You don't really know what you're going to get. You don't even know how far away it's going to be. And so you roll a die to see how big of a space lane you make, and then you plop down a system, and that system might be a planet or a phenomenon. You can research and do cool stuff like that, but those systems are not fixed until they are attached to a second system. Which means that when you place something down, you can kind of swing it around, and it has a really interesting mechanic to build out this very organic map while you're playing. And on top of that, you're trying to either beat up your opponents or trying to collect Ascendancy, sort of special resource that you get while playing the game. And so the theme of it, it really brought me in because I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. It mostly, fits in with the show. The idea that everyone's beating each other up is not great for the Federation, but they have specific rules to tie into the theme. Everyone else kind of makes sense. That's the Klingons are an aggressive race, for example. The Romulans, they do their own thing. So it ties in decently well. Now, again, this game can be a little swingy at times. It has a lot of dice rolling for the combat, but I did still really enjoy it. I enjoyed my time with it quite a bit. But that is not my number one game of the month. No, my number one game is a game that I also did a run through for on the channel, which is Empire's End. Now, this had a Kickstarter a little while ago, which was very successful, and I'm happy for it. I really like the designer John D. Clare's games. I also should mention I know John D. Clare, so I'm a little biased in that sense, but I still am a pretty big fan, regardless. And Empire's End, I think, is a very strong game as well. It is kind of a take on the No Thanks game, which is sort of a simple card game. This adds a lot to it, and I go into this quite a bit with Rahdo on our joint final thoughts, so definitely check that out. But the thing that I really, really like about this game is that you're not only... So the way the game works is you have this tableau of locations, and every turn you draw a disaster, and you're paying resources to not take that disaster because it's going to destroy one of your locations, which would earn you points otherwise. What I like about this game is that the thing that you take is not only going to ruin one of your locations, but it's also going to improve a different one. So that, I think, is a really interesting push and pull of reward and consequence. But on top of that, you're also paying to avoid these things if you don't want them. And then whoever takes the disaster also takes all of the payment that everyone else has been putting onto the card. So there's some the classic mechanics from No Thanks are there, but it also really spices it up in a way that that I like. And also, one of the things we talk about, it works well at 2 players, which you wouldn't necessarily think it would do. We have some thoughts about how it might be a little bit improved at a 2-player count, but in general, I think it works really well at 2. It works even better at 3 and 4. So that's my number one game of the month, Empire's End, and that's all from me. I'll pass it on to the next one. Bye, folks.
Hey everybody, Kimberly here, and I'm over in my little filming nook that I am upgrading this season on my channel. So I'm super excited about some fun things coming up for Tabletop Tolson, but first I just want to talk about all the games I played this month as run-throughs and as a gamer, because everyone says January is just really slow, and I have found it to be jam-packed with some phenomenal games and run-throughs for Rahdo's channel. So I just want to start off with, I have a list of 5. I'm so excited, so I'm just going to kind of blaze through them, and they are all favorites. I cannot wait to play all of these games again. So it's hard to rank them, but for me, that 5th spot goes to Dogfight. Rule the Skies in 20 minutes. This is the 3rd in a series of 20-minute games that I think it's PSC Games is putting out. Now, this one is not by the same designer as the first 2, Blitzkrieg and Caesar, but this one is by Carlo A. Rossi. And this is a 2-player game where players are going to draw from a bag and then draft one at a time to fly their plane in a circle. And they're going to chase each other and hopefully shoot the other plane down. It is a lot of fun. I have to say, after playing a couple games with different planes that give you different options to fight with and to fly with, the more I play it, the more I find myself intrigued by it. So I am really enjoying Dogfight, and there are 2 maps and plenty of planes that have different chits to draw from, so it's going to be kind of endlessly explorable. So that is my number 5. I'm going to move on to my number 4 favorite, and this one is one I did a run through for here at Rahdo's channel, and it's called Donut Shop. And Donut Shop is just a nice, lovely, clean, beautiful card game where players are going to play a donut square down on a central playing area. Everyone's kind of building up this donut display case. And then afterwards, if you can, make an order with cards from your hand. You are going to box up some donuts and then send them off to customers for, of course, like points, right? So it's just a nice, simple game of which order do you take, which donuts do you take at the end of your turn to set yourself up for the next round. And you're playing in a central playing area, which means that players are going to kind of get in each other's way in a very nice way. Light game, beautiful game by 25th Century Games. I really enjoyed Donut Shop. The next one is a game that I finally got my hands on, and it's Atiwa, and it is by Uwe Rosenberg, and I had no idea it was about bats, but let me tell you, it's probably the most perfect marriage of theme and mechanics, because knowing the story and knowing about where this game takes place in Ghana, and the fact that you are allowing bats to be kind of like your central provider for growing fruit trees and getting more like food for your families, and having all these different locations, and it's all about bats. I was just shocked. I was so surprised. And I'd seen the name, and I'd seen Uwe Rosenberg, and I was like, okay, at BGG. So I had no idea that was a bat on the cover. Maybe I should pay more attention to details. But for me, this was just a really, really cool worker placement game. And I think it scales great from 2 to 4. And you really just grow your area. You have all these cards that create these locations where you get to grow trees. You get to grow fruit on your trees. You can bring in goats and wild animals. You can train your families. And when you train families, they bring in gold, but they also are not allowed to eat the bats. And so bats could possibly be a source of food, but generally you want to keep them for victory points at the end of the game. It's really, really cool. So Atiwa was my number 3. My number 2 is a game that I did a run through for here on the channel, and it's the second expansion to Nidavellir called Idavoll. And Idavoll is just great. My only complaint with the game is that there isn't enough. Like, it doesn't go long enough, because I really like the features that it offers, and I love that you've got these characters that give you an objective. You have these animals and these giants and these gods that are going to give you one kind of specialty, and there are 4 of them in 20 cards. So there's essentially 4 types, and there are 5 cards each. And it just melds into the base game so well. The artwork is stunning. All of the different features just make so much sense. And so for me, Idavoll was kind of just an automatic hit after playing and just seeing the dynamic of these creatures. So I actually want to move on to my number 1, which was the top game that I played this month. Wow, let me tell you, this game really, really surprised me. And it's a game from last year that I didn't get to play. It's called Woodcraft. Speaking of theme, this is all about growing trees and crafting things in wood. You get to glue things together. You get to saw things apart. You can add on extra blocks to things. And it's all about these dice. And your dice are your woods, and you have 3 different color of dice, and you have these objective cards that you're trying to reach. You are trying to meet because they are going to give you blueberries and ongoing victory points. There are several income tracks that you get to score at a variety of times in the game that kind of give you that boost just when you need it. But the money or the currency in this game is blueberries and you're growing trees and cutting wood. So thematically, it's just loads of fun. But the thing about this game is there's an action selection on a rondelle, and just like so good. It's so good. I really like the way it works. I love the bonuses you get on those later actions, the ones that nobody picks at first and that kind of fall behind. And there's a whole mechanism where you can't go past where there are old ones. And this thing moves around on a sawmill. Talk about theme, because that's the rondelle. It is just a super cool engine builder with dice that you don't roll, you just use them as pips. And there is the market where you roll a die and then you put it there and you can buy the die, but you don't have to. It is just a ton of fun and just blew me away this January. So for me, that was the one that topped my list for all those 5 games, 2 of which I did run-throughs for here on Rahdo's channel. Now, I do want to mention I've got 2 games coming up in February that you should look forward to. They are going to be my run-throughs. I'm going to do Frostpunk, the board game. This is a super cool Frostlander expansion pack that I still haven't opened yet, but I'm going to be doing that, which is a cooperative, stay alive, you're probably going to die due to exposure and starvation kind of game. So I'm really, really excited about Frostpunk. And then the other one is Homeworld Fleet Command. Where's my Homeworld Fleet Command? Did I put it down here? Oh, I have it down here on this shelf. Aha, here it is. I'm sitting next to my super cool shelf where I get to show off everything. And this bad boy is a 2-player kind of Memoir 44-esque undaunted battle between 2 players. So those 2 games are coming up for run-throughs in the month of February. And then on my channel, I have got 3 previews coming up that I'm really excited about. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am about the first one, which is Alpujarras, which is by Dr. Steve Finn. It is one of his heavier games. We're used to a lot of his lighter fare, those 20 to 30 minute card games. This one is very Euro inspired, and it's got the turn order time track, and wow, I just love it. I love it so much, and that is coming up on my channel, as is Reviving Kathmandu by Lemery Games. This is their 2nd game in their series around the world, and this game is a wonderful drafting. You secret bid for cards, and then you place those cards and you build up these buildings. You are reviving Kathmandu by rebuilding the structures in this location by doing 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4 highs. And so you're stacking and you're building these beautiful structures. And then lastly, for, I think it's Jijamik, I've got Qawale, and that is a 2-player abstract game that literally takes 10 to 15 minutes. And we played 3 in a row last night, and I can't wait to get that on the channel. So lovely, lovely abstract game of stacking stones. So if you want to check out some of those previews on Tabletop Toolson, please do. And I look forward to sharing my run-throughs for the 2 games that I mentioned coming up in February. All right, everybody, I will see you later. And you better believe I'm going to give my mama a call because she needs to be talked to. All right, bye, everybody. Back to you.
Hi friends, Ruel here, and these are my top 5 games of January. Starting off with number 5, Colorfield, which Michelle and I did a run-through right here on the Rahdo Runs Through channel, and we really enjoyed this one. It is a light gateway-style tile laying game. You are master painters painting your masterpieces using a tile laying and tile drafting. So each of you has a canvas that starts blank, of course, like any good painter does, and you prime it at the start of the round with some basic tiles. And then through the process of tile drafting, you're taking tiles from the palette, bringing them into your canvas, and trying to replace them in a way that you line up colors and get areas and match up points. And the longer you can get a color through your painting, the more points you'll get. What I really loved is that the game only takes about 20-30 minutes, and there's some really neat decision points every time that you go, because you have something you can take, onto your canvas, a tile, but then you're leaving tiles that your opponent can take that may help them as well. So again, it's that whole denial draft. Do I take this for me, or do I just deny my partner for one? But at the same time, there's another thing that's really cool. If you play the advanced variant, there are different abilities that can come up after each round. So these either change scoring or they change mechanisms during the game. And I thought this was such a smart way to, I feel like, give a little more complexity to the game without making it too convoluted. And you can just play the base game, and I think that's the one that'll get to the table a lot with new gamers. But for gamers here, you're watching the Rahdo Runs Through channel, I think you really add those advanced variants in, and you're going to have this nice little 30-minute game that has a nice little bit of brain crunch, but not too much. So Michelle and I really enjoyed this. It is our number 5, Colorfield. Number 4 is going to be real familiar to viewers of this channel. It is Stefan Feld's masterpiece, The Castles of Burgundy. Yes, I played this game recently on my channel. I actually did a solo run through using a BGG variant that I found. Very simple variant. It is just, a die that you use to take out tiles each round. And you're still doing the same thing that you all love to do in Castle Burgundy. Roll those dice, lay those tiles down in your estate, and try to score points for the various types of tiles, whether it's animal tiles, buildings, or the yellow knowledge tiles that give you endgame goals, or selling goods. All of that stuff is still there in the solo variant. I really enjoy this. And, it's a classic for a reason. Anytime I bring it to the table, it reminds me of what a masterpiece it is and how wonderful the gameplay is. And it's still good after all these years, folks. That's why it was my number 4 for the month, The Castles of Burgundy. My number 3 is yet another tile laying game. Do you recognize a pattern here, folks? It is number 3, Keystone North America. Now, when I first heard of this game, I was thinking it's going to be just like Cascadia. You have animals, you have habitats, it's a tile laying game. It plays nothing like that. And it is, in my opinion, way more crunchy. You're taking a 4x4 grid, and your job is to fill that out with all the different habitats with animals and stuff. So it doesn't have the double draft of Cascadia, but boy, oh boy, it's got some really tough decisions to make. It's really meaty because you're trying to line up your, habitats and animals in a way that in that 4x4 grid where you can get ascending or descending numbers, 1 through 6 or, 5 through 2 or whatever. And you have resources you got to manage as well. And then you have different abilities as far as like, an action you can take after each round. And if all the actions have been taken, then they flip over to their, use side, and you can use those as well. Wow, it is so crunchy. I love this one. Now, it is interesting because as simple as the game is, you're just, drafting one little tile from the main area of the tableau and putting it into your player board. That sounds so easy, but it is not. You have to think about, you're scoring rows and columns. So as you're lining those numbers up, ascending or descending, you have to think not only, horizontally, but also vertically. So you're never going to score as much as you want to in this game. I realize that right off the bat, but there are ways to be super smart about it, and you have secret objectives as well that can sort of offset, hey, I may not have gotten the row or column I wanted, but I have this one secret objective that I was able to score. I soloed this again on my channel, and it was such a great challenge. What's really cool about the solo game is it's actually a campaign of 20 different games, different goals, and they introduce new abilities and new actions and just new goals. I've gotten through a couple of those on my own, and I'm going to continue doing that over on my channel. That is why I love Keystone North America. Okay, the tile laying games keep on coming, folks. My number 2 for the month is Project L with the Finesse expansion. Now, Project L went out of print recently, and Board Cubator, the company that, went out of business, they actually had like a going out of business sale. So I picked up the expansions for this game. I love the base game. It's a really straightforward Tetris style game where you mix in Tetris puzzling with engine building. The brothers Murph taught me and Michelle this game. We loved it instantly and found a copy. And then when we heard they're going out of business, I was like, I got to get those expansions. So we added in Finesse. And what this does to the game, it really elevates it to, honestly, like top 5 tile laying games of all time for me. I forgot how good Project L was. Once we added the Finesse expansion, we were blown away. So every round, if you've played Ubongo, you'll recognize the sort of like puzzly aspect to it. But it's not real time like Ubongo was. You're taking Tetris-style polyominoes, trying to complete puzzles. But what's cool is every puzzle you complete, it's either going to be worth points or another puzzle piece, or both. And then as you complete, then you're going to get more puzzle pieces. You can upgrade those puzzle pieces to like bigger pieces or different shapes. And you're going to continue completing puzzles till, you reach the end game condition. But with the Finesse expansion, this really ramps it up. It has in-game goals, either scoring goals or goals to get more resources. It adds a currency to that, you can start using the currency to get other pieces. Oh my gosh, it adds a layer of complexity or depth to it that wasn't there in the base game. The base game's fine, don't get me wrong, but it really takes up the next level as far as complexity and just a rich tile laying game. Now, there is no theme. There's no cool theme like some of our other favorite tile laying games that actually I've mentioned on this list, but also like, stuff like Baron Park, which is super cute with the bears. This is just straight up polyomino love, and it's one of my favorite games, tile laying games of all time, and it was my number 2 for the month of January. So my number 1 is not a tile laying game. It's a game that I covered here on the channel called Heat Pedal to the Metal. This is a race game that instantly became one of my favorite race games of all time. It is from the designers of Flamme Rouge, which if you know me, that's one of my favorite racing games. This is the next level Flamme Rouge. So Flamme Rouge was a really straightforward game of hand management, and it was really clean, just such a clean design. That it hit the table a lot. My gaming group played a lot. I played with my family a bunch, and now this one, Heat Pedal to Metal, this is geared more for hardcore gamers because it adds a bunch of steps. So I can see people talking about, well, Flamme Rouge is a little more streamlined, it's a little more pure. Heat Pedal to Metal adds a bunch of things, but I think they all add for the betterment of the game. The experience is more like, you're managing your car. I mean, you're pushing your car to the limit, getting that pedal to the metal, and, your engine's going to heat up. And what that is in your hand, you have a certain number of cards that, you start with 7 cards, and you can only place a number of cards for what gear you're in. So if I'm in first gear, I can play 1 card. If I'm second gear, 2, and so forth. And then those cards, as they're played and discarded, you're going to refill. But if you refill with heat cards, the heat cards don't do anything. They just clog up your hand. You can't get rid of them until you go down to a lower gear, which gives you a cooldown. But there's certain areas of the track that do that as well. It's so much fun. I love it. And, racing games to me, when they're like this clean and just, you follow the steps. You've got 7 steps in this game, or I think it might be 9 steps, but a bunch of them, they won't come into play unless you're on certain parts of the track or in certain situations, like trying to draft on a car and stuff. But even those steps, they're not that hard to figure out. It's just, you have them all there on your player aid, which I love, a good player aid. But what this does is it really just feels like you're, trying to push your car to the limit by, got just that little bit of push your luck. It's like, ooh, you know what? I'm going to try to go around this corner as fast as I can without wiping out. Can I do it? I'm going to push my luck, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now, I soloed it for the channel, and I soloed it a few times afterwards, before and after I did the run through. I love this solo game. It is so easy to manage. It's like an automa deck, but all it does is gives you numbers for the other cars, and you're just going to move them that number of spaces. But there's a neat little way they do it so they're never too far behind or too far ahead. It's just so brilliant. Check out the run through. I love it. You can play as many AI cars as you want, up to the limit, of course, that's in the box. But great game. An instant classic as far as racing game goes. That's why it's my number 1 of the month, Heat Pedal to the Metal. All right, take care, folks, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, that was a good list of stuff, and I think of everybody, I'm most jealous of Ruel. I don't know why I had him cover Heat. They could have sent it to me, and it could have been me. It could have been me. But anyway, folks, you may have noticed we haven't heard from Amy and Maggie. They were actually on the road for a good deal of January and didn't get many games played, but they did one that was covered on the channel, and it's a wonderful run-through for a great little game called Applejack, which is the latest from design superstar Uwe Rosenberg. And I have to admit, when I first heard about this, I thought this was going to be a lighter game from him, maybe more like a patchwork kind of thing. But after watching Amy and Maggie play through an entire game from start to finish, I was really impressed. And once again, I'm wondering, why didn't I cover this for my own channel? Because it looks really good. Of course, Amy and Maggie just do an amazing job demonstrating, and they are just so much fun to watch, the way they interact and grab tiles each other wants and all of that. But it's like a very, very clever draft system for grabbing the tiles, and then how you want to lay the tiles and the way they interact with adjacent tiles. Really sharp stuff. I should not have doubted Uwe Rosenberg. He looks like he has produced another fantastic game, and Amy and Maggie showed it off to great effect with their run through of Applejack. And that was it. Thanks to everybody, and you'll be able to hear from Shea and Kimberly and Ruel and maybe Amy and Maggie next month in the next roundup. But folks, it's time for the really big show. I have got 14 games to talk about that Jen and I played in the month of January. And let's not beat around the bush anymore. Let's start with least favorite, and at the end, we'll crown a new game of the month. And sadly, my least favorite game of the month coming in at number 14 is Basketboss. And now this is actually a remake of a game that came out quite a while ago, and it's gotten a completely revamped look to it that looks fantastic. But what is it? This is not a basketball game per se. This is more of a basketball business simulation where every round players are engaging in open auctions to recruit the best potential future basketball stars that show up every round, and I think over 7 rounds, if I recall correctly. And if you are successful in recruiting these stars, they go to your own board. And the interesting thing is they have all these different star level rankings. And the makeup of these stars is really different. Sometimes you have rookies who are really, really terrible at first. On their first few rows of their card, they've only got 1 or 2 stars, but then they get better and better and better. Sometimes you've got old grizzled vets who are at the peak of their game, but the longer they stay on your team, the worse they get. And so you're bidding on trying to get these, but after all the bidding is done and everybody's gotten their own basketball team, they are going to count out the number of stars we've got on a given row. And whoever has the most stars wins the playoffs and gets trophies. And it's really clever. I'm amazed how smartly this game captures so much intricate decision making, because also every round we get special power cards. There are objective cards or game changing season cards that will really mix things up. So you have a lot to bear in mind for every single bid you make in this game, trying to make the perfect team to get those sweet, sweet trophies. And Jen and I were really impressed. We didn't care about basketball at all, but it's so good that wasn't really an issue. And we like business simulations, and that was really satisfying, trying to work out and get your team to be in peak playing performance. The only problem is, oh my gosh, this has got to be one of the more aggressive auction games we played in quite a while, and it was a little overwhelming for us. Our least favorite kind of auction is the one where, I raise you, you raise me, I raise you, you raise me, and would have loved to have seen it done a different way. But, so that's why it comes in, because really, it was just not our favorite style of auction, and we found ourselves often making moves, not because I want that, but I really need to keep you from getting it, and you really want it really bad, and it was just like, it's an aggressive game. It's an aggressive auction game. And it's brilliantly done. Great presentation, lots of in-jokes as well for basketball fans, which Jen and I are not, so we didn't get most of them. So, sharp design, just not a good fit for us because of the implementation of the aggression auction style. But I would love to try it at a higher player count game where it isn't quite so, a battle of wits, everything I deny you helps me. I think we might have enjoyed it at a higher player count a little more. It's just a little too cutthroat at 2-player, which is why Basketboss comes in at number 14 on the list. Okay, then we go on to a number 13, Bot Factory. Now, this is the latest Euro design from design superstar Vital Lasarda, and he had a co-designer this time. I'm very sorry. Oops, and we're almost at the end of this playthrough. Let's rewind a little bit so you can not see my final score when I played solo for the backers of the show. Thank you very much, backers, for keeping the show going. So anyway, Jen and I played this. I played it solo, and this is basically Kanban streamlined and simplified down almost to a gateway game. I would certainly say this is a Gateway Plus game. If you have successfully introduced your friends and family to Ticket to Ride or to Lords of Waterdeep, let's say, they're ready for Bot Factory, which at its heart is a very simple worker placement game where you have one worker, you. And every round, you're going to move your worker from the current workstation they're at to a different workstation, whether that's a station where you're gathering robot parts or another station where you're putting the robot parts together to score points, but you can't do that until you go to the other station and get the blueprints you need to make the robots. Or you might want to go to the meeting room where you can try to fulfill certain robot goals, where you have to get certain combinations of robots, or increase the value of the robots on the open market so that you'll get more points out of them after having successfully built them. And it's really sharp, and what makes it very special is every one of these actions you go to has the potential to get string bonus combo actions on the others. Without that, this would be pretty straightforward. Oh, I do this, and I do this, and I do this, I make a robot. Repeat, repeat, repeat. But the true mastery of this game is all about knowing, well, I'm going to go over there, even though I don't need to go over there, but I'm setting myself up for something later, and I can still achieve what I want as a bonus for what I'm doing. And so the game is very clever and a wonderful introduction to some of the deeper, more interesting combo-laden stuff that you see in most of Vita Lasarda's designs. In fact, if you're a Vita Lasarda lover and you want to bring your friends over to enjoy the Kanbans of the world, this is a good gateway to it. And Jen and I were very impressed. Now, why does it come in at number 13? It's no fault of the game, really. It is just does what it sets out to do brilliantly. It's a Gateway Plus game, and if I'm going to play a Vita Lasarda game, I'd rather play a heavier one. And so this one was a little more lightweight than what we were looking for. But oh my gosh, I really enjoyed it as a solo game. As a two-player game, Jen, I was like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I would totally play this with my niece and nephew, or my stepmom, as Jen would say, because it would work for them. We'd all have a great time. But just for me and Jen, we're just looking for something a little bit crunchier than what we got in number 13 of the month, Bot Factory. Okay, now let's move on to number 12, Holiday Hijinks, number 5, The Birthday Burglary. Now, this is the second game we have played in the Holiday Hijinks line, which are very cute, fast-playing, hour-long escape room-style puzzle games. But they're micro games. They literally just come with a pack of 18 cards. And you sit down, and over the course of an hour, you solve, well, in this case, the mystery of the burgled birthday presents. And the thing is, every one of them is themed to play at real-world holiday events. Somebody's birthday, Christmas, the 4th of July, they're kind of American-centric holidays, but Thanksgiving and Halloween as well. And this is the second one we played, and considering it's number 5 in this series, I think it's a bit more complex than the first one we played, the Kringle Caper, because it really made very smart use of smartphones. And by the way, I should say, folks, it's 18 cards, plus you need a smartphone to be able to manage and type in, my answer for this puzzle is this, correct or wrong, grab these cards, do the next puzzle. If you like escape room style gameplay and you have somebody who loves that kind of stuff and their birthday's coming up, this is perfect. We both enjoyed it very much. Of course, it's a one and done, but then you give it away to somebody else so they can play it on their birthday. It's the perfect birthday gift for puzzle lovers. And it comes in lower because really, we only played this because it was Jen's birthday. We're both a little burned out, honestly, on escape rooms, but this is definitely not as hard and complex. This one doesn't make us feel stupid. We only ever had to go to the hints once in this one, and we got a 4.5 out of 5 present rating at the end. So we came away feeling good, had a nice time, and Jen liked it more than me. She's very excited for Valentine's Day. We'll be playing that one next month. But for now, Birthday Burglary, Holiday Hijinks number 5, comes in at number 12, the perfect birthday gift. Okay, let's move on then to number 11, Empire's End. And now this is interesting. Shea did the run through of this, but then he and I got together to do a co-hosted final thoughts because we had very different experiences playing this game. I love it. It's from John D. Clare. It is a game where players are trying to oversee an empire in very rapid decline as plagues and droughts and fires are just destroying all your little empire cards. But they're also destroying everybody's around the table. And here's the deal. Every round, most rounds, I should say, a new disaster is going to hit. It's going to hit one empire. And that is the empire that doesn't outbid everybody else, because it's kind of a reverse auction where we're bidding and raising and raising and raising to be the one not to take it. Whoever eventually says, oh, I can't afford to raise in this auction anymore, well, you get hit with the fire, and that's going to destroy your farmland. Too bad, so sad. But here's the deal. All of the stuff that everybody else bid to avoid that, all the tools and the food and the gold and all the rest of it that they bid to avoid that flood or whatever it was, the person who ended up having to take it takes all those goodies as well. And yeah, they just lost one of their point-scoring Empire cards for the end of the game, but they just got a lot of resources, and they are going to be in control for the next few auctions because everybody else just bankrupted themselves avoiding it. And then not only that, but the card you ended up taking, not only did you get all the stuff that everybody else bid, you also get some cool upgrade that you can apply to one of your Empire cards that hasn't been destroyed yet. This is a brilliant design, and I liked it a lot. But Jen did not. For her, it was too brutal. The game was too brutal, constantly ripping everything apart. Me, I like that kind of thing, and Jen likes it too, but for her, it was just a bridge too far. But the problem we had, the reason it comes in at number 11 for us is, again, this is an incredibly aggressive auction game, and if you're going to play this 2 players, you are going to win or you're going to lose every single time. And that makes every auction, which are these little baby step auctions, I raise, you raise, I raise, you raise, I raise, you raise, even though everybody knows how much stuff you've gotten, it's like we have to go through all these steps that would be much more interesting in a higher player count, but in the 2-player count, it's much more crushing because there's only one person I'm bidding against, and so the 2-player auction in this game is too aggressive. It felt mean. It felt like, okay, I am doing this to really hurt you. And both Jen and I found, it's a little too personal. And I think I know I would love this. Man, I hope to be able to play this at a higher player count someday because where it's not personal, where, hey, I'm just trying to avoid. I'm not trying to ruin my one opponent. I'm just trying to avoid getting ruined myself. I think that's going to work a lot better. And having talked to Shea, who's played it at all player counts, I think he agreed. So, if you want it's a brutal game no matter what, but if you want a brutal 2-player auction, check out number 11, Empire's End. Or if you just want a really fun, exciting, drama-filled auction for higher player count games where players aren't quite so mean to each other, again, Empire's End. Okay, let's go on to number 10 on the list. We have got Tether. Now, Tether was a sponsored preview for a sweet little card game that's going to be crowdfunding in the month of February 2023. And so Jen and I played it. And this game is literally just a deck of cards. But the interesting thing is when you have your hand of cards, every card has 2 numbers on it. They're an inverse. If I've got a card that's a 26, it's also a 62. And every card has an astronaut on it. And what we're trying to do is we are trying to play sequential numbers of astronauts on the board. The longer a line of astronauts we can make. Oh, I've got the 26. If I can get the 27 and put it next to the 26, I'm getting extra points. If I can get the 25 and make that line longer and longer and longer, it's worth more and more points to me. But here's the deal. If I put that 26 down and I connect that 26 astronaut to a 27, I have also put down 62 and 72. And this is predominantly a 2-player game because the interesting thing is I put these down. I'm trying to set up a tethered group of astronauts that I could score, but you can add astronauts to the same group I am based on different numbers. Suddenly there's a 72, you had a 73, and you could add your astronaut to the group I was making because here's the secret sauce of this game. One player is trying to connect astronauts on a vertical line, trying to make a long, skinny, narrow group, and the other player is trying to connect them on the horizontal line. Because once a group gets big enough, at least 6, but then you can also score them at 10 and 14, everybody scores that group, or I should say all 2 players. And the thing is, if say it is a 2x3 group, I would score 3 points because it's 3 tall and it's only 2 wide. So we are trying to combine these groups of cards, playing off of what each other plays, to completely change the makeup of all these groups. And the other interesting thing too is over time, these groups start to glom together. You start out with a bunch of little independent groups, but eventually somebody plays a 72. And you know what? For me, that's a 27 because I'm on the other side of the board. And the 28 for me is in this other group. So now on my turn, I can bring that group and this group together. And suddenly there's a super wide group that's not very tall. And I get huge points and you get nothing. And you set that up for me because you didn't see that connection. This game is mind-busting. It constantly forces you to re-engineer your brain to see the world from another player's perspective, and both Jen and I are very impressed. Now, I should say, Jen was extra impressed. Jen does her own version of the show. Every month is called the Jen Jogs. It's for, Patreon and member backers of the show. She does her own roundup where she ranks everything on a 1 to 5 star scale. In the year 2022, Jen played almost 170 games and she had 10 5-star games in the entire year. She played this in January. She gave it 5 stars. So I only say that to just underscore how much Jen loved this game. I think it's brilliant too. I think it is a wonderful, wonderful puzzle. But boy, it really works my brain and kind of sometimes makes you feel stupid. Jen loved it for that reason because of how hard it makes your gray matter work. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed. This is definitely one to watch out for, folks, when it goes on crowdfunding in a few weeks, I think. It's a prototype that we want to keep as well. Number 10 on the list, Tether. Alrighty then, let's go on to number 9 on the list, Paper Dungeons, a dungeon scrawler game. Now, this is a very, very good roll and write set in a dungeon crawling type scenario. What's a good picture of it? Basically, everybody is competing to get their party of adventurers, a fighter, a thief, a cleric, and a wizard, through a dungeon as best they can by, traversing a routes that you make. It's a bingo style game, so we roll 6 dice every round. Everybody has access to the same dice, but you're only each round going to get 3 of those 6 dice. And you use those dice to move your party, to level your party up, to get healing potions to keep your party alive, to build artifacts to help you fight the bosses and do other stuff. And the game, you are under a very, very tight schedule as you work your way through this game because after you've had a few rounds, you have to be in a position to fight the first boss. If you don't, you run away and you lose points. You lose renown. But if you can make it to them and you've got a team that's leveled up enough to beat the boss, then instead of losing renown, you get points and all of that. But you also take damage, so you better be ready to mitigate that damage. Honestly, over the last few years, there have been like a half a dozen roll and write style games that are themed after players competitively doing their best to make it through a dungeon. And so I've played almost all of them. And as far as I'm concerned, this one is by far the best. It is fantastic because what I didn't talk about, even though there's a ton of replayability because every time you play, you get a different combination of monsters and objectives you're trying to chase after and private objectives you're trying to complete and all that. But the way the dice work, they're really cool custom dice. There's 3 white ones, 3 black ones. And depending on what rolls, certain dice could be really useful for one player and not useful for another. And it's just a really sharp, fun design, a great presentation. Jen and I were both really blown away by it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Again, if you like roll and writes and if you like dungeon crawls, there are a bunch of options on the board, but none of them are as good as number 9 of the list, Paper Dungeons. Okay, then let's go on to number 8 on the list, Ancient Terrible Things Reawakened. Now, this was a sponsored preview that I covered for a game. It's about to go live on crowdfunding, and I have been a huge fan of Ancient Terrible Things, which has such a long name, it doesn't even fit on screen. Let me go on ahead and change that to ATT Reawakening, or Reawakened, so that will fit a little bit better. I played Ancient Terrible Things with Jen, which is a Yahtzee-style pulp horror competitive game many, many years ago. I think back in 2013 when it first came out. Blown away by it then, blown away by it even more when its expansion came out. And so now, Ancient Terrible Things Reawakened is about to go live on Kickstarter. And this is not just like, oh, we just tweaked a few things. This is basically Ancient Terrible Things 2. They made such huge changes to streamline the game and make it much sharper. They really increased the production value with the coolest build-it-yourself cardboard dice tower I've ever seen in any game by far, while not sacrificing any of the really fun, crunchy. I mean, there's a lot of Yahtzee style games out there. Roll, keep some aside, re-roll, keep some aside, keep some, and now deal with your hand. Ancient Terrible Things has always taken that core idea but made it so much richer and more deep because you have to sacrifice resources to get those rerolls. And sometimes you live with what you've got while you are also trying to face the Ancient Terrible Things, which requires you to get, 3 of a kinds or straights or whatever. But you also, sometimes, I'm not going to beat this Ancient Terrible Thing. I've come over here to get this item that I wanted to pick up, and now I'm not trying to roll to beat the Ancient Terrible Thing. I'm trying to roll to fulfill a menu that will get me resources that I can use against the real boss I want to beat later. There is so much fun going on in this game. If you don't want to wait to see my new run-through that goes up, you can check out my original run-through. Although, man, the game has changed so much. Can't wait for everybody to check it out. It is as good as it's ever been. No, I would say it's better than it's ever been. Number 8 of the month, Ancient Terrible Things, Reawakened. Okay, then let's go on to number 7 of the month, Lofoten. And oh my goodness, this is a great, great game. And it's also an incredibly sad game because let me just stop the roundup briefly to pay my respects to Pearl Games, who have an amazing design house. Sebastian Dujardin, Javier Georges, and Alain Orban. They have been producing amazing games for over a decade now, and I believe Lofoten will be their last one because Pearl Games is disbanding, and that's incredibly sad. But on the other hand, though, what a great game to go out on. This is a 2-player only Battle of Wits where we are Vikings, not raiding and pillaging, but engaging in trade. Did you know Vikings could also be peaceful? And all the rest of it, that's what this game focuses on. And it does it through such a cool mechanism. On your turn, you have got 3 action cards. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick one card, the left one, the middle one, or the right one. And that is going to let you, I'm trying to see if I can find some pictures of those cards in here. Let's go the other way. You pick the left, the right, or the center card. And it does not look like there is a picture of these cards. No, there is not. Okay, well then I'll just keep looking at the game. If you pick the right card, that means your board of 4 Viking ships can either move to the right, to try to reach different trading outposts that you want to get, or you can rotate clockwise. And that means you can get different ships in position so that, hey, this ship that wants to pick up sheep, I need to move all my ships over 2, so I need to move my fleet over 2, and I need to rotate clockwise once so that my ship that wants sheep can get to the village that has sheep so I can pick them up. And so if I have a 3 in my hand and it's my right card, then I can play that 3 to move twice to the right and then rotate clockwise, and then my ship will pick up those sheep. And there's Sebastian. And then after I've done that, on a future turn, I've got to play more cards to the left or right to rotate my collection of 4 ships back around to the other side. So that represents me, taking the rewards I got back home. And this has got to be one of the coolest, fastest playing little puzzles we have ever seen. It is so unique and so unusual because, I mentioned, so I play the right card, I go to the right, I rotate clockwise. I play the card to my left, I go to the left, I rotate counterclockwise. Or I play the card in the center. And that means I install a card on my outermost ship, and that's how I program the ship to say, oh, you want to pick up beer, or you want to pick up sheep, or you want to pick up gold or whatever. So, and in that case, I just queue up for later. And then at the end of my turn, I draw a new card and I put it either on the left or the right. And by putting it on the left or the right, I am reprogramming what I'm going to be able to do with my hand. If I put it on the right, then what used to be on the right now becomes the middle. Do I want that to be on the middle, or do I want the one on the left to become the one in the middle? This game just blew us away. And it comes with all these cool little modules that gives you different special objectives for the way you collect and deliver goods, different Viking leaders that will give you special powers if you unlock them, and it's just so much fun. I liked it a lot. This is another one that Jen absolutely loved, and we should be having a run-through for it next month so you can see it in action, and I'll talk more about it then. But, folks, January was a very good month for such an amazing game to come in at number 7, Lofoten. Okay, then let's move on to number 6, Atiwa, the latest farming simulation from design superstar Uwe Rosenberg, one of my favorite designers of all time. And I always love it when he gives us something new and fresh and interesting in farming. And boy, has he done that here. This game is fantastic because it demonstrates through gameplay the real world practice in Ghana, I believe. It's starting to spread there. And this is actually literally trying to spread the word that, you know what, folks? If you live in peace and harmony with the bats in your region, instead of treat them as pests that have to be killed or destroyed or eaten, if you work symbiotically with the bats, you can raise everybody's circumstance. It's better for you, it's better for the bats, it's better for the planet. And this game is, make no mistake, a message game using brilliant gameplay worker placement from Uwe Rosenberg with some cool little twists that he's never done before that I really liked. He is demonstrating how humanity can change our goals. Hey, instead of strip mining, and creating more pollution in the environment that will harm everybody in the long run, how about we make our living working in unison, in harmony with nature? And this game gives you the tools to do that. Or if you can't quite pull that off, you can go for some quick rewards and say, no, to heck with it. We're going to go for the mining and the pollution, and we'll see which strategy wins. I love everything about the message of this game, including the fact that it comes with this big booklet that talks about the recent history of this, which is basically like a new initiative that's being pushed in, I'm pretty sure it was Ghana, not Uganda, which I accidentally said in my run through. I apologize for that. And the people behind it, the bats, how this works, and how all of this inspired this game. Because Uwe Rosenberg, and here's the deal, Uwe Rosenberg was so inspired by this real world initiative of living in harmony with bats and using them and their ability to reseed forests in a way that is more efficient than humans could ever do, because it's working with nature. He's actually written a full nonfiction book that's being published this year as well to further the ideas that this game demonstrates. So I say, I love everything about Uwe and publisher Lookout Games' motives for trying to make crystal clear, in a way, because this is really a lighter game. This is kind of at the same level of his, like, what's it called? The Norwegian Newsfjord. This is not a super heavy game like Caverna or anything like that. So it's something you could teach to players, and it's really nice and intuitive. It's fast playing. It's fun, and it has an incredibly important message. Now, my only complaint about it was that I wish that, there is some stuff that randomizes setup. You get different locations that you can expand your holdings with that will change the game up a little bit. But the core game is still about working with the bats. Things don't change in a huge way unless you play solo. And here's the interesting thing, folks. The game comes with 10 or 12 different solo missions that give you different objectives. That if you want to win, you have to beat these specific things that make you play the game in really interesting and different ways. And so Jen and I played it, and we both really enjoyed it. We decided it was a keeper, but we both said, well, but you know what? I mean, it's probably not a game we'd want to play as often because it's going to be kind of samey. I mean, there's still going to be variety, and it's still going to be a fun experience, but we're used to Uwe Rosenberg games where there's so much. Like Agricola, every time you play, you get a different combination of cards that radically changes the feel. Here's the deal. On a lark, Jen and I played it again with a home rule, which turned it into a cooperative game, where both of us had to take one of those solo objectives, and we played like normal, but we both had to complete our solo objective to win. And suddenly, it became a really great co-op game, and with a lot of replayability because the way you combine these different goals that we each have, and it was fantastic. So I talked about that in my final thoughts, and so this is a homebrew variant, folks. This is not an official rule set for now, because I recently got contacted by the developer of the game from Lookout, and they are now taking that idea and trying to run with it and turn it into an official rule set so Atiwa can become a co-op game as well with tons of replayability built in. And that is amazing. I'm incredibly proud of the small part I played, because hey, if this can be played co-op, that just means even more people can experience it. And considering, the underlying message of this game, to me it makes more sense for it to be a co-op than a competitive game to begin with. So I'm very, very excited. So my rating right now is based on it as a competitive game. Still ranks very, very high because the gameplay is so good. Watch my run through. But it might be going up in rankings in a while if the official rules get updated. We will see. But that was number 6, Atiwa. Okay, then let's go on to number 5 on the list, Rebuilding Seattle. And boy, this is the game we played the most in January. Jen and I, we used to play this game half a dozen times, and we both fell pretty hard in love with it. This is a tile laying game about rebuilding after the Great Fire of Seattle at the turn of the century. And first of all, for a Seattle-phile like me, Seattle is my favorite city in the world. And probably in Jen's top 5, but it's my number 1 city. I love Seattle so much. It's so great to have a game that is focusing on all the landmarks I know and the neighborhoods I know. And yeah, you end up creating a weird version of Seattle where SeaTac is on Queen Anne Hill, which would never happen, but that's okay. It's just cool. Hey, Seattle got rebuilt a different way when I did it. That's cool. But what is the game? It is a polyomino tile laying game with a strong economic element, and it's absolutely freaking brilliant. Actually, the game I could probably draw best comparison to would be Barron Park, which is known for Barron Park and Rebuilding Seattle. It's a double-decker tile layer because first, you got to lay tiles that are the foundation that you can build on as you expand your neighborhood, whether it's Capitol Hill or the waterfront district or whatever. And then you've got to spend money, and money gets so tight in this game so fast, drafting cards that give you the polyomino pieces that represent the financial institutions, the transportation, the restaurants, all the different types of buildings, and those are polyomino tiles that you're trying to squeeze together to fit on top. And of course, that gets very challenging very quickly, especially because on your neighborhoods, there are water areas and forested areas and building areas that you don't want to cover. You need to keep those icons uncovered so that you can score more points off them later. So, right off the bat, this sounds kind of like Barron Park. A lot of in common with Barron Park, although the draft is much more engaging because it's quick and easy to run out of money, and you've got to be really smart about how you draft the tiles, as opposed to just grab the ones you want. But when the game gets really interesting is the fact that there are 6 event cards. And on your turn, most of the time, you're going to grab one of these cards that lets you build on top of the foundations, or you'll make more foundations, or everybody has 3 special powers that are unique to them. You can do one of those special powers as well, pass local laws. But sometimes you will instead trigger an event that affects everybody around the table. You will trigger a restaurant event. And what that means is everybody looks at the quality of their restaurant and how many restaurants they have, and do they have enough restaurants to meet the demands of the ever-raising level of population they've got. Think suburbia in that regard. And if you do, you're going to score points. And so there will be cases where, okay, I'm doing really good on my restaurants, and now's the time for me to trigger this. Because I look over at yours and you're like, oh, you'll get a couple points, but I'll get 6 points. Yeah, baby. Or I will trigger the event that is a transportation event. Because here's the deal. Like Puerto Rico and lots of other following games, whoever triggers this event, everybody gets to do the event, but whoever triggers it gets a bonus. And these are big bonuses, game-changing bonuses. And we're going to play through 3 eras, and every era is over once all 6 of those events have been activated. So players might not have much money and just make a land grab, a land rush for all those bonuses they get off the events. Even if the events don't work for them, you still might want to do it. And this so elevates the game. It creates so much exciting tension with a very simple set of rules, very fun economic card drafting, polyomino tile laying, event creating game that blew Jen and me away, which is why Rebuilding Seattle is number 5 on the list. Okay. Then let's go on to number 4, Circadians First Lights Specialist. Oh, which, by the way, was a sponsored preview. Let me go on ahead and add that. I forgot to say it. Sponsored preview. Okay. And let's see. That's not going to fit. That's going to be too long. Circadian FL. All right, so Circadians First Light is a game I covered many, many years ago. I think it's fantastic. One of the greatest dice worker placement games of all time. It was already one of the greatest dice worker placement games of all time when it came out many, many years ago. From designer Sam McDonald, who is one half of the design super duo from Garphill Games, responsible for, the West Kingdom series and now the South Tiger series. But Sam McDonald, or S.J. McDonald, is an amazing designer in his own right. And so his first big game with Garphill was Circadians First Light, a brilliant dice worker placement game with simultaneous action planning, dice sacrifices you have to make. Everything about it was brilliant. it's got an expansion now, folks, and it's even more brilliant now because it brings in even more cool special powers, new rules so you can have multiple special powers at once, but most importantly, it brings in new dice, new worker placement dice. And the interesting thing about these new dice, they have no pips. Your pip, a 3 is very different than a 6 in this game when you're doing your worker placement. But if you can get one of these dice that have no pips, you could treat that die as any number you want. So they're incredibly powerful. They are the specialist dice you send around. But you have to work hard to recruit them. The other important thing is everybody, in addition to everything else they get with their setup, everybody gets their own outpost, which is a very powerful special action that they can only do with specialist dice. So if I get some specialist dice, I want to build my outpost so I can use my outpost and get that thing up and running. Here's the deal though. I don't build it. They all start pre-built, but I can't use it until I've got a specialist. So once I've got my specialist, I could use my outpost. Or I could use yours, because yours is the perfect one I need to do right now. And if I do that, you end up getting a payday, I end up getting what I want. And so the level of collusion between players now is bigger. It exists in such a cool, fun, fresh way. Circadians First Light was already one of the greatest dice worker placement games. Is it the greatest dice worker placement game when you throw specialists in? It might be. It's very, very good, folks. And you can check out my run-through for it right now if you'd like to see just how much it adds to the gameplay. I'm absolutely in love with it. Like I said, January was a good month, and Circadians First Light Specialist comes in at number 4. But we're not done yet, folks, because then we got number 3, Vital Lacerda's Weather Machine. Oh yeah, as I said in my run-through, Vital is back, baby. His last couple of games have been brilliant, Lisboa and On Mars, but they were too much for me. Vital Lacerda is known for making some of the crunchiest, heaviest, most in-depth and intricate Euro-style games out there that are also the strongest thematically as well. So I've always loved everything he's done, but recently, for the last few years, he's made them too heavy for me in Gen. A Weather Machine is kind of a callback to his more midweight games like Gallerist or Vinos or the original Kanban without the EV. And I'm so happy because I love it. Of course I love it. It's my number 3 of the month. And why do I love it? For all the reasons I love Vital Lacerda games. It is a wonderful fusing of strong narrative world building, and in this one it's a fantastical world. It's a steampunk world where humanity has made weather machines and control the weather, but it creates knock-on effects. It's speeding up global warming, and so players are in a race to do as many experiments as possible and publish their findings to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So this is a very, very fast-paced race, and it kind of borrows elements of it's kind of a combination of his earlier games, Kanban and Gallerist. You have one worker, it's you. Like both of those games. But you also have a manager, the doctor who created the weather machine in the first place. And that manager is moving around. And depending on where he is, that affects where you want to go. You're kind of chasing after him. But every turn, you're going to move to a new area. And like Gallerist, every one of those new areas has 2 different actions you can do on it. So even though there's only 4 areas to go, there's 8 things you can do. And these are all about very strongly integrated thematic things. Building your own weather machines. Working with Dr. Lativ to be able to run his weather machine, to do more research. Working with the government to help them build their own weather machines to solve the problems and getting subsidies from them. I'm really surprised. A lot of people say that it's not thematic at all, unlike his previous games. And I say to those people, you weren't paying attention. Everything is incredibly thematically grounded because everything is driven by this. There's several different resources you collect in the game, but the most important one are called vouchers. And I think they made a mistake calling them vouchers because vouchers, to me, to my American ears, sounds like coupons you get. Oh, I got some vouchers to trade in to get a prize at the county fair or whatever, or whatever it might be. Or I've got a voucher that'll give me a discount when I buy a car. That's not what vouchers are in this game. Vouchers are authorization from your upper level managers of your corporation, whether, or what's it called, Lightning Incorporated, that lets you do the actions you want to do. So I know what I want to do. I know where I want to go. But can I do the action if I don't have enough authorization from my superiors? I got to go do some other action to be able to do what my bosses want me to do before I can do the thing I want to do. And for me, That's the thematic element that I think everybody's ignoring because they're called vouchers instead of like managerial authorization forms or something like that reminds you that you are living in a bureaucratic nightmare in this game, trying to get the Nobel Peace Prize to prove you can save the world. You don't save the world in this game. You're racing to get the Nobel Peace Prize. That's how you win. And there are so many ways to pursue it, but it's all only with authorization. And that is really the new twist here that makes this feel so differently, and to me, feels incredibly thematic. I really liked it a lot. I'm so happy to get a new Vita Lasarda game that we want to hold on to, even though Jen thought it was a little heavy. It is heavy, but oh my gosh, this game is going is so combo-tastic. You can create really wonderful, compelling combo chains of actions. It's great. It's number 3 of the month. Weather Machine. Okay, then let's move on to number 2 on the list, Arborea. Now, this is a sponsored preview for a game that is crowdfunding right now, and it's fantastic. It's from a brand new designer, and this designer is definitely going to be one to watch. He's already got a few other games, in the queue that'll be coming soon. But what is it? Well, here's the deal. If you are looking at the screen right now, this is a game where we are nature spirits trying to commune with the forest and pilgrims who live in the forest to send them on pilgrimages to, bring harmony and peace to the land. And everything I just described, if you didn't know what I was talking about, you'd say, oh, you're talking about Bitoku, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about Arborea. Arborea and Bitoku have so many thematic similarities, so much overlap between the two, where you're dealing with pilgrims that go on pilgrimages and trying to recruit them, and you are a weather spirit, and you are trying to, heal the land, and so many overlaps from a storytelling perspective. They also are both worker placement games too, with really cool and interesting twists on worker placement. And it's because of that when I did my final thoughts, I mentioned that for me, this is a Bitoku killer. Now, some people got very upset by that because I think on the Kickstarter page, it just says it's a Bitoku killer when they left out the part where it says, for me, it's a Bitoku killer. But for me, it is a Bitoku killer, and I love Bitoku. But I love this more because while it makes perfect sense to me to compare this to Bitoku because of the overlap in terms of thematic integration and overall player goals and all of that, even though the gameplay is very different, it makes more sense to compare this to Zulk in the Mayan calendar. And for folks who don't remember Zulk in the Mayan calendar, it is the coolest game of all time that really focuses on the passage of time. You place your worker, you don't get your worker back until several rounds later after they have leveled up and they can do big things. This takes that to the next level because we're doing the same thing without the cool plastic spinning gears, unfortunately. Instead, when I send my worker out to go on a pilgrimage, I might leave him on that pilgrimage to move forward round after round after round, 3 or 4 rounds, and in the future, I'll get him off because the longer he stays on his pilgrimage, the more powerful he gets, the more special powers I could do. But here's the interesting thing. Unlike Zulkin, if you put your pilgrim on a pilgrimage line and start moving, I might want to jump my pilgrim on there as well. And now your pilgrim and my pilgrim are working together to travel farther and faster than they could alone. And I love that. In a competitive game where we are often working together to further both of our goals, that is just a beautiful story. It's so fresh and implemented so well. And there are so many other cool things about this game. The way this game handles the accrual and distribution between other players of resources is incredibly brilliant. It's also got a really great card layering sub-game going on as well. This game blew me away, and Jen was really impressed by it too. It's still fundraising right now, I believe, and I still stand by it. That, for me, it is a Bitoku killer. If you said, hey, you want to play Bitoku or Arborea, that's the one I'm going to pick. 7 Ways to Sunday, and it is my number 2 game of the month, Arborea. But, folks, we've got one more game to talk about. My new game of the month. Rise. Oh my goodness, this game is incredible. It is so good that it retroactively makes it into my top 10 games of 2022. Because it came out in 2022, I did not get my hands on it until January, and then when I started playing it, I fell so hard in love with this game. Oh my gosh, this game is so amazing. And it's a really simple game. Rise, this is about the rise of civilization, the rise of industry, the rise of culture, the rise of education, the rise of everything. But really, it could also just be referring to the mechanisms because this is the ultimate work your way up progress tracks games. I was talking about some other ones. Zulk and the Mind Calendar is famous for its progress tracks. Lots of games do this, but nothing does it as much as Rise. Because in this game, you have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 unique different tracks that represent different elements of a society. And every time you play, you are going to be focusing on, well, am I going to really try to push my culture? And if I do that, that's really going to supplement my education. Or no, this game, I'm really going to focus on industry so I never run out of money, but then I'm going to have to be able to deal with the problems that creates. So maybe I need to buttress up my banking industry as well so I can pay to deal with the pollution that I create. Every time you play, or maybe I'm just going to focus on a free and fair press, which just gives me all kinds of benefits that will, because the thing is, every turn, you are going to, whatever you choose to do, whatever action you take, you're going to move forward on one track. And every step you take on that track, you get to activate every power on it. Not just the power at the end, but every power. And most of the time, you are advancing 2 or 3 steps, and every time you go up 2 or 3 steps on this track, oh, that means I go up a step on that track, and I go on that track, and that track let me go up on the other track, and track. It's so fun. This has got to be one of the most satisfying and engaging games of combinatorial gameplay I've ever seen. This game feels to me like playing 3 copies of Ganz Schön Clever simultaneously, where they are all interconnected, where everything dovetails to everything else. And I haven't even talked about the action selection mechanism, which is an absolutely brilliant, randomly generated thing where every round, a bunch of cards come out. You're going to pick one of them to do the action, but the further to the right you go, the more you have to pay. But the further to the right you go, the more benefits you get from all these events that also get randomly generated. But the further to the right you go, the more likely you are, or no, the more likely you are to get passive benefits when other players take their turns. Everything about this game is amazing. I love it to pieces. It is so satisfying. It's in my top 10 of the year. I'm going to update my top 10 of 2022 in April or May sometime, probably more like May, so I'll still be on the road in April. And you'll hear more about it then, because I cannot sing the praises, my praises enough for Rise. I have one complaint, and this was actually a complaint my wife had, and it's a complaint I've seen other people have as well. It's very abstract. You're doing all these societal betterments, but I think the developers made a huge mistake, and I'll talk about this because I am doing a run through for this soon. Because every track step you move up, they don't tell you what you did. In Tapestry, hey, when I move up, I've developed boats. I've developed penicillin, whatever it might be. In this game, they never tell you what's actually happening. They leave it to your imagination. And every time I see somebody who says, well, it just feels like I'm just moving up tracks. It's all random and arbitrary and it doesn't mean anything. Like, it totally means something. Look how cultured I am compared to you, but look how rich you are compared to me. And I think the developers missed a trick by not wearing their theme on their sleeve a little more. But that doesn't stop me from loving number 1 of the month. Oh, it's so good, folks. Rise, rise, rise. And that's it, folks. A lot of gaming goodness. Like I said right up front, hopefully you found something of interest to you and yours in that run through. I saw a lot of really good stuff, a few surprises on the contributors list, and boy, January was a great month. The best month in a while, actually, for games over my wife and me. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and we are going to end it right there. Let me give a final thanks to the sponsor of the show, Fun Again Games, and have a very, very nice day, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye. And now you can go ahead and click on some other stuff.